you can move here and specifically to Berlin, but it's not quite how long can you get away with not speaking German in Germany. It's how long would you like to feel or to express a deep entitlement to the English language.
Today's guest on our podcast is Matt Brooks, an event producer and poet from Chicago based in Berlin.
I have a number of things that I feel much more critical about Germany than I did before. My first experience living outside the country was how I learned Spanish. I was studying abroad in South America. Calling the country I come from America, period, changed distinctly. If you're traveling around, including where both of you are from, it's like, well, this is also America.
And hello, liebe Freunde. Welcome back to another episode of the Guten Tag podcast, the podcast where we talk with interesting people living in Berlin who have a story that inspire us, and I hope they will inspire you as well. Today, we have another guest from United States, and he has been living here in Berlin for some time, and we will have a very interesting conversation. So, Brooks, how are you?
I am well. Thank you, Eduardo and Benji, for welcoming me and for outing any possibility of coming from Canada before the listeners get to hear whatever comes out of these vocal cords. But no, very happy to be here. You all do such wonderful work.
Yeah, thanks.
Especially with I know the really strong following and storytelling you have with the Spanish episodes, and I'm very pleased to join in some of these early English-speaking episodes.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
So you come originally from Chicago, right?
That's correct. Yeah. I grew up around Chicago, studied still within the Midwest, and ended up spending a number of years working along the East Coast in a number of cities before making it over here.
What changed your mind about living in the United States?
The first answer to that might be what wouldn't change one's mind about living in the United States in the last few years, but that's quite the pessimistic view.
Okay.
So perhaps I won't start with it that aggressively, but it does feel that way sometimes. When I'm asked why Berlin or how did this come up, I just answer with the word circumstances.
Okay.
Because there was one visit that really solidified it with great friends. I always lead with this as well, like a incredible visit of genuine connections, good conversations, feeling the cultural landscape, the green space, all of these things we know that people tend to be attracted to Berlin for, without any clubbing or drugs. And it still sold me, which I think when you talk about moving to Berlin, or when someone perhaps who hasn't seen you in a long time hears that you've moved to Berlin, there's these kind of these eyes, these questions of, okay, how is it? It's not all about drugs and clubbing, but so I'm a big concerts and music person. This is one of the things that attracted me to the city, but it really was people and hit.
You were part of a growing startup back in the United States. I think from Chicago was the startup.
I was working in Chicago at first with it, but it's a London-based startup.
Okay. Oh. And then you say you grew up into a high-pressure leadership role.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, any startup where you find yourself in. I'll say this: I began volunteering with this organization because it was something that came up during my studies outside of Chicago, and I was fortunate that my kind of entry-level first job out of school came through this organization. Much to my surprise, as I rescinded a acceptance to a advertising agency, which would have so been not enjoyable for me in the end. But when you're coming out of university, sometimes you're just excited to see an offer. And I can understand. I certainly felt that. But when you're one of the first dozen employees at a startup, and by the time you leave, it's over 200 people. Naturally, it was only one layer between myself and sitting in kind of the board meetings, which in your early to mid 20s is a very humbling, intimidating at first feeling, but an incredible opportunity to learn and develop a broader scope of skills than would have been possible at this ad agency, let's say.
And when you mentioned there, high pressure leadership means, of course, I think a lot of working hours, a lot of responsibility. did that impact your decision on moving out of the US and coming to Berlin?
Yeah. It was certainly a part, but I think one of the best ways I can put it is I'm very grateful and happy that I did this work. That because it was very community driven. I was supporting so many local artists that I'm still a fan of today. Like I bought a ticket the other day to see an artist who I booked years and years ago who's playing at Lido in Neukölln in a few weeks, and it's going to be so. Who knows if the artist will actually know me? Like one person that booked her ages ago, but it's the very deep connection that I feel to any artist that I've worked with is something that I wouldn't trade for anything, let alone the friendships as well. But the working hours, what I mean, what do you expect? It was intense. The ability to have any other professional projects, let alone strong hobbies outside of that, was quite challenging. And part of this is the startup culture that, for better or for worse, again, I don't regret working at the company, but for better or for worse, weaponize the word community or family. We're a family. This framework that is very deeply entrenched in American work culture. I'm sure that also happens in
here.
Place like
happens as
Berlin-based startups.
Every time I hear someone say, be part of the XYZ company family, I sort of like cringe a little bit because red flag. I'm like, don't call it family. Nobody believes that anymore. Call it like our team, our whatever. But using the word family,
So at some point at work, in the first company that we worked, I feel like I like very much my colleagues. So I really feel like I'm in a family. But maybe it was kind of
but they weaponize that sometimes.
Maybe, I don't know how it's in other companies. At least in that one, it was very nice. But maybe, they use it.
But this is the thing. It's a visible.
Yes.
The red flag in itself is a visible cue. The idea of having a feeling of family, or the word that I take most contention in, which is community, the feeling that comes from that can be incredible and valid. And that means that the company, even if operating through the system that it does, and we can talk about the agreeing of that system, if you have those genuine feelings, I'm not discrediting that, but using it as a marketing tool, that's the weaponization, right? Like the idea of creating an image of this can be an all engrossing part of your
identity.
And that's what for me, this company I worked at, this was the case. It was my identity. But I was lucky that in this case, again, I believed in a number of the core values, and I built a lot of strong friendships through it because it was community driven, at least.
So, well, basically, you're still, less than 5 years in Berlin, I would say.
I'm heading towards the third year mark. 3-year mark.
Okay. You think you're still in the honeymoon phase, or you already out of the honeymoon?
I think I'm out. I think when you have to renew a visa, go back to the Ausländerbehörde, and it's not just whenever you return to an institution to renew something, that definitely gives it shakes that feeling off.
But that's good that we are in the same boat for the first time. Mexicans and in the United States, Americans in the same boat. And also, I have a work colleague, and he is from England. And when all of this with the Brexit happened, I was also like smiling, like, now we're in the same boat. Now having to go to the Ausländerbehörde and have to extend a visa or something.
We should look up what waiting room is they've dumped the United Kingdom into.
Yeah, exactly. But
Great Britain, better.
But at least I felt like, now you see how it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But no, I think the honeymoon phase, it has rubbed off, and I have a number of things that I feel much more critical about Germany than I did before, but I don't feel regret or tired of being here and engaging in new better informed ways. I think this is the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
The other day I had a friend who arrived around the same time as me, move out of the city. And this was a strange feeling of the first time of someone close in my life already leaving, this feeling of already, and yet we know that this is a city where a few years is totally normal to do. Whereas the two of you, how many years have you been here now?
I've been living here for 12.
Yeah.
8 years.
But
So
we
you've
have
probably
seen a lot
seen
of
your
people.
fair share of people come in and leave within your life
exactly.
here.
So we have some friends that they already left. And I was supposed to stay here only 1 year. I don't know how I managed to do 8.
Yeah, so one day I will be saying goodbye to Benji, or maybe not. I mean, he said he was staying 1 year, so now it's been 8. What do you think are the misconceptions about living in Germany that people have?
It's a very good question.
If you live in Germany, you have work less than 12 months, or if you have bought a new computer, or if you have to travel more than 30 minutes to your workplace, well, maybe it's worth filing your tax refund in Germany, because I think you might receive a very good tax return. I know that we think that it might be very complicated, or some people are even scared of the Finanzamt, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Everything depends on the tools that you're using. For example, I use Wundertax.
With Wundertax, you can complete your entire tax return online. What's more, you can calculate your potential refund, see what deductions you're eligible for, and determine whether it's worth filing before you even start.
For example, I did it last year and I got 500 euros back. And some people even say they got more than 1,000 euros. So if you go to gutentag.wundertax.de, Wundertax like Wonder Tax, but with a U, they even have the website in English, so it will be easier for you. And it will take you around 20 minutes or even less. Also, that's the best way also to support this podcast. Gutentag.wundertax.de. Thanks for our sponsor, Wundertax. And now let's continue with the conversation. What do you think are the misconceptions about living in Germany that people have?
It's a very good question. I think it's already different today than when I arrived, and certainly when you arrived with, this must have been when Angela Merkel was in office, right? Like this difference already is pretty substantial. And to your previous point about people who maybe come here but then find jobs in other places in Germany, I would even argue that those friends only moved to Germany when they left Berlin to another city within Germany. And by this I mean the same thing that the example exists in the US of Austin, Texas, being this bubble city, keep Austin weird, this place that exists on its own plane, where you could say, someone could say, I didn't know you live in Texas. And you could say, no, I live in Austin. Because you don't associate it with Texas. And I think Berlin has this ability to hide a lot of the realities of living in even a place nearby, Dresden, let's say. I think you would feel a lot stronger of a difference from this. And I almost said help. This is why living here you can get away with only speaking English, which I feel a level of discomfort with that and contention to that, except for those who through their circumstances of what their work looks like, don't have the capacity to learn German. This is not a Du musst Deutsch lernen framework argument, but it is this sense of English entitlement that can come from living in Berlin specifically that I feel I'm still wrangling with my discomfort in that, which is why I love that I don't live in, I don't know, Kreuzberg, let's say. But I think the misconceptions, to answer your real, I'm sorry. Oh no. Maybe number one is that if you come to Berlin, you'll actually eat German food. My sister lives in Milwaukee, a city with a significant amount of German influence, and she has eaten a lot more German food than I have in years of living here. So I think it comes to the theme of you can move here and specifically to Berlin, but not feel like you live in Germany at all.
Yeah. But you speak already some German, right? I mean, you speak Spanish because the other day we were speaking Spanish. I guess it's fluent, right? Quite fluent.
It has been fluent. Perhaps one day we can test it in a a Spanish episode. This could be the dream in which I'll prepare more for. But
how's your German?
It's good. I just got a B1 certificate the other day, which was really very proud to have achieved that. But much more work to do.
How long do you think someone can survive without knowing any German?
More than 8 years.
I mean, outstanding of if you want to stay here, right? Like outstanding of the example I bring up about how you can get away with it in Berlin. I think it can be a gradual journey as long as there's incremental progress. The question back would be, how long do you want to, I don't want to use the word, how do I put it?
Create the clickbait, just say
it's not quite how long can you get away with not speaking German in Germany. It's how long would you like to feel or to express a deep entitlement to the English language. It sounds really aggressive, but again, everyone has different time resources. My way of looking at this is different from the angry Kassefrau. Like, why have you not learned enough German? Like these experiences that can be deeply painful for immigrants, feeling this German sternness and even curt or rudeness towards why have you not learned enough?
Yeah.
This feeling that I think Spanish speakers who are learning English in the United States always have felt as well. This very pushy, learn this or
you don't
be here, right? I think there's the toxic side. But I do think that how long can you get away with English as being your language?
Yeah.
That comes with a deep sense of ignorance to the place that you're in and the beauty and the doors that can open from understanding yourself in a different language. I think if we looked at this as not just learning a new language as a chore, but understanding who are you in that language? Who are the two of you in your mother tongue versus how we're speaking right now? Who are you in German? How does that personality shift for you? That's one of the most beautifully human things that even, again, not fluent in Spanish anymore, in my B-ish level of both languages, I can already feel this, and that's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I can understand that. So by just speaking English, you are like in a bubble. So you are not open to receive all this input from the country that you are in.
Yeah, and especially if you live in Kreuzberg or Friedrichshain, I think there is even harder to learn German. At least where I live, it's harder to find people who speak English. If you go to anywhere, any shop, anything, they just speak German. But I've been in places in Friedrichshain or in Kreuzberg where even the person who works there, they don't speak German, so they speak straight in English.
Yeah, they start with English. And in this way, the bubble is forced upon you, right? I think there's two sides to every coin, and you can come here and live and not speak any German and enjoy your time in Friedrichshain, probably, where, like, if you're living there, let's say. But I think these are more likely to be the people who are not staying here long term.
Yeah, maybe.
And when we talk about what immigration means for a place, there's the understanding, not the grace to give to people who just want to try out a country for a little bit. They're here for a number of reasons. They have things going on that you might not understand or be able to judge them, or you might judge them wrongly, not knowing these things.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side, which is what do you want to be doing with that language? So as I found myself in what I would call an infantile stage of what activism in my 30s looks like compared to how I understood this word in my last decade.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly powerful layer to why I would want to learn German.
Yeah.
Consuming media, attending talks, attending meetings, and being able to understand and contribute, or at least listen. If you live here and don't have that as a tool to your disposal, then you lose an opportunity to engage in a way you might want to otherwise.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned, for example, something about being political, how do you mix your passion of within the music and organizing events together with a political activism, and since when have you become more active in that sense?
My idea of activism in the previous years was self-education, donations when one can, and demonstrating when one can.
Mm.
Those are all of course wonderful layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my immigrant experience has been one where I have felt two distinct things. One, especially before I renewed my visa recently, I felt very intimidated and afraid to demonstrate at the risk of how that might affect your visa status, depending on what you're demonstrating for. It's one thing if the government seems to be supporting versus if the government is not supporting. And the other side of it being, without the ability to vote, okay, how can I be involved locally?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really only been, even in the last few months, and anyone who's watching this that has been encouraging me to do that knows you know who you are. I love you. It has taken very special people in my life to ask hard questions of what my stance is, and force me out of this feeling of, if I can't vote and if I can't speak the language well enough, how can I participate?
Yeah.
And if there are meetings that are in English, there are also ways to get involved in which English speaking provides a diversity of opinion and experience that is helpful. And then, of course, there's also ways to be involved as you learn more German.
I resonate with something that you say before about the fear of demonstrating. What if I demonstrate? I can demonstrate about the things that the government is okay with, but what about the things that the government is not okay? And for me, it feels like the demonstrations that sometimes are, I would say, worth or fighting or worth doing are the ones that the government is against.
If you take just the clip of me saying protesting for something the government agrees with, that sounds contradictory. And so I'll amend this to say ones that feel more palatable to that structure.
Yeah.
So protesting the AfD, for instance. Yes, there's AfD support and there's AfD members, but protesting the AfD in the capital, 1/3 immigrant population, left-leaning city is a much different feeling than a Palestine liberation protest or demonstration, better yet, because one of these comes with, yeah, most of us agree. Sure, even feeling like if even a silent one, an invitation, like the other parties, I'm sure were thrilled that there was so many demonstrators circling the Reichstag against AfD.
Yeah.
Whereas the other day, for instance, not far from where we are, the demonstration in front of Rotes Rathaus, where they are flying an Israel flag and 4 Ukrainian flags because we support refugee populations that look more like Germans.
Yeah.
That is a much more tense feeling where you see the police tactics that we know again and again are used. The riot gear of the police standing on Neptunbrunnen from the start of a daytime protest with tens of thousands of people, the intimidation begins right away.
Yeah.
And there are people again that know so much more the struggle and the reality of this as I, coming from the States, coming with a level of privilege to these demonstrations, have a very different role and responsibility, right? But there are so many organizations that constantly put themselves at risk to stand up for what is right or what they believe is right. And in the case of ones I'm talking about, the ones I agree with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
so I think this is what I mean to distinguish, how, it's not like, does the government agree with it or not? It's how much is the government willing to tolerate your resistance? How palatable is your resistance?
You said aspiring leftist. What does that mean? Why is in some of the circles being called a leftist is even used as a slur, right? What it means for you, aspiring leftist, and why is that?
I think that I have lived my life in the environments that I was in, whether it was family or groups of friends, fellow students at university. I think I was always seen as the most liberal one. Which, yes, sometimes was more something to make fun of, right? Like lib, other words that start with lib and are quite offensive, as well as hipster, all these labels that come from style or expression of clothing or whatever. And I come from a country that has a different educational system and history than somewhere like here, with such an important history of leftist. For anyone watching this to maybe see what I'm processing as, okay, you moved to Berlin and suddenly you're like, okay, I'm going to be an anarchist and I'm going to start graffitiing everywhere and I'm going to, I don't know, have a even crazier hairstyle, become a punk, whatever. There's more piercings than there were, and there's more tattoos, but you know, there's a reason for that. Like, there's a reason for this city, with all its changes, still being a space to question and challenge how your ideology, how your privilege shapes you.
What would you say, or what do you mean by privilege?
My ethnicity, the country I come from, and my gender. At least my forward perceived gender identity.
Have you ever received a critic, for example, from maybe from Germans or maybe from other foreigners as well, that why do you're so active, or why do you want to change the country if it's not even your country? Why are you so involved in politics? Have you ever received that kind of message from someone?
Not yet. Not yet.
But what would you say is the reason that it's worth being political active in a country that is not even yours?
If you're breathing its air, then you hold the responsibility to the people around you who also are breathing that air or being choked of it. Even if you can't stay or don't plan to stay for years, I don't quite understand. Or can't vote, certainly, but I don't quite understand the idea of not caring at all. I mean, at the very least, no. I'm sure a lot of people who were here during the election that Olaf Scholz came in through, I'm sure even people who don't find themselves very politically active were following it, interested in it, at least noticing all the signage everywhere. But I don't know. I think if you there's a lining here of course, not everyone has the time and space. Even the most active of activists will say that there's only so much that one can do. Even the people who have sacrificed so much for those causes. But I don't know. I feel like I would, in the same way of if I left here not learning any German, if I left here not learning something and participating in some way to a cause I believe in and questioning myself on what those beliefs are, if I left without doing that, it's like, why didn't you just go to London? Go to somewhere that you speak English and you feel like when you're walking around London, it just feels like New York City most of the time, right? Like you just, why don't you just do that? Or why did you leave your country in the first place?
Yeah, sometimes it feels like when you criticize something about the country, a lot of people is saying, then why don't you leave? Yes, exactly. So
we also did a video and actually went viral on the Spanish podcast where we talked about this new requirement that some place in Saxon-Anhalt, or requirement for to declare the right of Israel to exist on paper.
Yes,
that went viral. But in the comments from a lot of people were their country, their rules.
Yeah,
don't question it.
Yeah, funnily, people that is not here sometimes.
And I mean, are these people that like maybe they feel that that's the only thing they can say as their own status in a place is pending? There's so much fear and intimidation that can come into not having even, let's say, permanent residency, or not having a blue card, or some of these things that are a little bit in between, maybe like at least my status and citizenship.
Since before we mentioned about the privilege, and what are your thoughts on these two terminologies that are being used a lot by foreigners in around the world? What are your thoughts on the term expat and the term immigrant?
I didn't expect that question. That's such a good one. I find a discomfort in calling myself an expat because it implies a certain level of, again, entitlement, but I don't want to overuse the same words. I think it almost proclaims your lack of solidarity in the overall immigration experience with others, and also how you plan to approach your time in that place. Like an expat meetup. I understand that's saying a meetup of people who have immigrated from a country that speaks English and is likely the US. I understand that. But I haven't found myself in those circles very often where I'm enjoying my time. And one of the organizations that I've worked with for a long time is it's called Skip the Small Talk, and it's basically having deep conversations with strangers.
Okay.
Maybe I'll give you a card. I brought it. Maybe I'll give you a card to answer at one point, whether or not it makes it in the ending. But I for all of my hopefully not over the top self-criticism in this conversation thus far, one thing that I feel has always been really important to me is being able to have fun questions that don't feel like this basic expected small talk type of thing. I feel like what I can expect from an expat circle or expat meetup is definitely small talk and definitely conversations that maybe don't align with how I enjoy social time with people.
Yeah.
I just if something's branded with that name, I just probably won't go.
Yeah.
You know? Nor do I want to be considered that.
Yeah, I just use the term expat if I want to apply for a flat or something like that. Expat. And then somehow they read it differently. But that's part of that privileged part that you're talking about.
Sometimes I think there's this, there are stereotypes, but also for instance, you know that some people from United States, sometimes when they travel to another country, they see these two lines, for the passport check, and then they think that they are not foreigners. So you see the locals and foreigners, and then they think that they are locals, or they should go into the local line instead of the foreigner line.
I saw.
Was this like an experiment or something? Or
no, people they have to put even the flag of the United States in the line of foreigners so that they know that they are foreigners.
Yeah, it says it's true. It says foreigners and United States or something.
It says and
other countries and United States, something like that.
No.
Yeah.
Because it says European Union, all countries, and United States.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about what do you think about these stereotypes about United States?
Yeah, I think there's probably always some level of over-exaggeration to a stereotype, at least to get a good laugh out of it, but they all come from somewhere, right? My first experience living outside of the country was how I learned Spanish. I was studying abroad in South America and then in Central America for another summer program. And this was a place where, for instance, the undoing of calling the country I come from America, period, changed distinctly. Because if you're traveling around, including where both of you are from, it's like, well, this is also America. That's a continent.
I don't know if you noticed that I said all the times I said United States when I was referring to in the United States or from the United States.
Because it's important to do that. That is the name of the country, not the entire a word that defines two continents, right? So this was really something that it was ingrained in an upbringing. Shouting America as a celebratory thing on the 4th of July or any time you're doing something absurd, like this is normal, of course, and until you have the experience of being somewhere else, and hopefully with kindness and grace or someone you respect, like helping you understand where that's insensitive or just completely wrong is really important. I'm not sure exactly which stereotypes you're thinking of, let's say, but this was an example where, it took no time of living for, in this case, 4 or 5 months outside of the country to undo something that was really a normal thing in conversation. Where are you from? America, or
even more if in Spanish, ¿de dónde vienes? De América. That will sound even de Estados Unidos.
Yeah,
yeah. That's a very interesting point. Something that opens the eyes of the people.
Yeah, I have another one for you.
Yeah.
Do you know that Mexico is United States of Mexico?
I never knew.
Yes. So
Sounds like
that's the
Republic
full
of
name.
Mexico
Yeah,
or
that's
something?
how officially Mexico, it is United States of Mexico.
I never knew this.
Therefore, we accept sometimes the term I'm American because Mexicans say I'm Mexican because the country, also the complete name of the country is United States of Mexico. So therefore, it's sometimes it's the justification to say, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, United States of America. Okay, American, Mexican. United States from Mexico. Okay, then okay.
I so did not know this. This is fascinating. so perhaps the argument is we should change the USA's name to the United States of something else.
Then you would be that.
So then if you say that last word as what you are, then it still works. You know what? Like thinking of where the colonial region was, we could have just called it the United States of Appalachia. Appalachia.
Yeah,
However you pronounce it. It's
Okay.
like the West Virginia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's where this is where I believe from many a large number of Scottish immigrants came a number of resistance movements that created and made popular the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. If you've ever seen this flag, it's a snake cut in a ton of pieces.
Okay.
It says "Don't tread on me," and it's actually largely now claimed and used by right wing.
Okay.
Whatever you would call them, yes,
Okay.
racists, or whatever you might call them, but largely used by right wing groups, whereas it was actually originally quite a kind of freedom facing banner in a region that was very different than kind of the more uppity colonial states. But I always find this flag so interesting.
We have a dynamic. We have here a lot of papers. We will pick a paper, or you will pick it first, and we will share one of those experience, each of us, about the topic or question that it comes in this paper.
This feels like a time that maybe we should have a beer as we do this.
Okay. But first of all, cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Centro adentro.
Arriba, abajo, al centro, para adentro.
Yeah.
All right. Name your favorite German dish. This is a personal question. So, I mean, I've been a vegetarian for a long time. Occasionally I'm having fish. And therefore, as much as there is, I have learned that there's a good vegan currywurst, which I was recently exposed to. It's, again, approaching year 3 here. And it took me this long to have a wurst. But I think I have to say it's Käsespätzle.
Oh.
Because this, I mean, you have mac and cheese as a child in the US all the time, and it's like the dish. And it's so good as an adult too. I mean, you're gonna it's so good. And the idea of this
Käsespätzle.
gorgeous, strange, looks like egg noodles. I think they are egg, but
Yeah.
it looks like a noodle that I would have in an Asian dish. And then it's just covered in delicious cheese. I finally had this for the first time at a Wintermarkt this year. I need to learn how to make it. I think this would be the goal.
And they do it with Bergkäse sometimes, so it's like this very stinky cheese sometimes.
And I think it's when we talk about living in Berlin and not necessarily having a lot of German food, this is the one.
Benji.
I don't know anymore if the food that I'm eating here in Germany is German. So I would say schnitzel or a kebab. None of them, I think, that they are German.
Well, the schnitzel, it's
I think it is.
It is.
It is?
German, yeah. I mean, every country has its own version of it.
But I think it's Austrian.
That's a Wiener Schnitzel.
Ah,
and that is
okay.
with
It's different.
veal.
Uh-huh.
That's the difference is with veal. Here you have a schnitzel normally will be with pork, but the Wiener schnitzel is with veal, and it should be very thin and flat. That's the one.
Okay, then schnitzel.
What do you eat it with? Is it on its own and a side, or is it in something?
The schnitzel?
Yeah, what does it look? I mean, again, veggie, so I have no idea. I'm like,
okay.
what?
I was like,
What?
Either have it with.
What do you do with it?
I mean, that depends on the region. You can have it with Kartoffelsalat.
Yeah, with Kartoffelsalat
okay.
is the best.
Or with Bratkartoffel, but
That sounds really good. I can't. I'm not a shaming vegetarian. That sounds good.
that was an easy one. So let's take a second one. Let's take a second one.
Okay.
Benji.
Let's see. Share a memory, a memorable experience from Berlin nightlife. Oh my God. Okay, so I remember that one of the first time that we went for clubbing, I was with you, and then we went the whole night. I remember that going out of the club, and then looking that it was already daylight. And that was I did not have so experience before because it's like time flew.
And in Mexico, clubs, they close at 2.
Yeah, exactly. Also that. So you don't have this experience. And here, like, you have clubs nights and nights. Like, you can start on Friday and then you can end up on Monday. If you can, if you take enough alcohol or even other stuff.
Yeah. Mine was also related to that, something similar. Also, some friends came from Mexico. We went to first we were invited to a VG party. Well, actually it was just a friend. She was invited. She invited us. So it was like a 10 people crowd. The guy of the party, of course, got very angry at her. And we were there also. Then we went out to another bar in Mitte somewhere, and then the night just passed through, and then it started to snow because it was in winter. We went out, I think, around 6 or 7 in the morning, hungry. My friend was super drunk, but all the crowd, the bunch of group, we went out, and everything. We opened the door, boom, everything was white, full of snow. That was a very nice experience. I was completely sober because I don't drink that much. My friend, I think he didn't see what was going on, but it was a very nice experience. This quietness in a Sunday morning, everything white, full of snow. That was a very memorable experience. What about you?
So I have 2 answers, I think, because as I mentioned before, one of my, as much as I've had a few nights in the clubs, and I certainly will have more, my heart lies with live music in a concert format. And usually sitting somewhere and having long conversations with the people you might have attended with afterwards, I think. And if that goes so late that you then take a walk, you go by the water, you see the sun come up, beautiful. These are some of the best nights. But I think one of the most memorable is actually one of the evenings that maybe sold me on moving here, which was when I was visiting and given the chance to MC an event. It was a concert with the company I was working with at that time, but it was not planned. It was very like, oh, you're visiting this city for the first time. Would you like to MC this event? And I was like, auf Deutsch? Like, what?
Okay.
No, it wasn't. It was English was good, but yeah, hosted this event, and then we ended up piling in this van, this massive van of one of the artists who were driving us to this bar that we were going to afterwards. So it was already a great show, good energy, dogs running around, good time. And then we pile in this car and we're like, we get lost, which just means I get a tour of the city. So I'm like so excited. We're driving around. I get to see everything in the city, like driving around like the Reichstag and this whole area, like museums and all this, like, and it was so wonderful. And then we ended up at Café Dachhammer, which is like
Dachhammer?
One of the, Dachhammer.
In Simonstrasse or which one?
Yeah, it's the one in Friedrichshain.
Yeah.
One, and you know, one of the 5,000 Berlin bars with the red lights and the couches and all this. And I'm sitting in there having great conversation, smelling like smoke for the first time in my life, in the sense of being in a smoking bar, which I'd never been in until that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a moment I still look back on really fondly. But I think I have to do my dear friend, you know who you are, if you're listening, who's I'm the resident non-clubbing friend of her life. And the evenings that might be more memorable for me are actually the ones where I have a great night. I go back, maybe even it's 2. It's not like super early. And I get up and I'm going on a run at 9 or 10 a.m. or something by the water up in like, I live in Weddings, like up in Plotzensee or something. And I get a text from my friend like, home safe. And I'm like the dichotomy and this feeling of I had a full night, great night, whatever. And I get up, I'm like starting my day, maybe shopping if it's not Sunday, going on a run or something, and then your dear friends are like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep, going home. It's like this reality only exists here. And sometimes in some ways those are my favorite nights too, where I've had a great time. And the next morning, my friends of mine are like, yeah, I'm good, safe, whatever. I think
just
it's like
going back from.
yeah, it's something that just I can't shake the feeling of this. It's kind of cinematic, right? It feels a bit like you're in some TV show about Berlin when this happens, and I often think about this idea that we have of a place in our head before we move there, what we expect of it. It's kind of it comes back to maybe this is the application of the German phrase Kopfkino, which is kind of when you project like how many ways something could go, and you're like thinking 20 steps ahead, and you're like, oh wait, I haven't gotten to this one thing. And sometimes I guess this is how we look at cities, and it's usually very different. Hopefully you still like it, but it never looks exactly how you thought. But going on a run and getting a text from a friend at like 10 that's like I'm going home from the club is definitely part of that original vision, and it always feels really something sentimental about it as it happens. Yeah.
Is there something you miss from your country? What do you miss the most?
The United States food from the United States of Mexico. I 100% mean it. The Mexican food, I miss it so much. No, there's so many foods I miss. Like you can like the idea of Chicago style hot giardiniera, these spicy Italian peppers that you can't find in Italy. They're Italian immigrant created in Chicago. Like these things. So I get a checked bag to bring this back.
Okay,
because,
all right.
So there's so much food, and then I think as much as I am generally not. It's not as important in my life as it was, and I like that. I do have a soft spot for sports. Not all sports, but growing up going to Bears games in Chicago, it's really a special thing that connects me with my family and city culture and these things. I kind of miss that, and
well, yeah, it's true. It's just a bigger sports fan culture, right? You have the basketball, baseball. American football.
Yeah.
Listen,
Hockey's
I said
great
American.
And of course you can go to Eisbären or Alba Berlin matches here and whatever.
But it's not it's very different there, the role that sports play. Also, every bar has sports on their TVs, right?
And you're always wearing clothing with it, right? Like this is another, this might be back to your other question of what is different here, whether that's true or not. The idea of if you are coming from the US specifically and you are used to wearing a lot of branded clothing. I mean, look at us now.
No.
The branding of your own podcast doesn't count in this case. This
oh yeah.
That works. But I think that's a really big difference. Like feeling strange wearing a hat of a sports team. Except I had this argument with someone. I'd be interested if you two have an opinion on this.
Okay.
I think that there are a few sports teams that have permeated into just fashion and are not so much about, oh my God, I love this sport or this team. And the Chicago Bulls are one of them.
Yeah.
I see so many people wearing Bulls jackets and hats and whatever. And yes, you could love sports. It's not like no one here wears sports things.
Yeah.
But like the other day I walked past a couple who was wearing one of them was wearing a Houston Texans hat and the other one was wearing a Houston Rockets hat. And I'm like, okay, clearly I know where you've come from because you're wearing two different teams. Like that is not a world, like you're not wearing a Lakers jersey that you got at some vintage shop.
Yeah.
Or you're not wearing a Bulls jacket that I think is more fashion than sports.
It's true.
Yeah.
Either Lakers as well, either Lakers or Bulls or
Yankees too. I mean, the Yankees had
Yankees.
That's
classic.
And I think Fred Durst made that very famous. Yeah, fashionable. It has been great having a nice conversation with you, Brooks.
I would also, can I quickly plug something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
We didn't, I got to speak about the really wonderful experience of being welcomed and encouraged to share creative work in a vulnerable way.
Mhm.
And this is largely through the open mic scene that exists in Berlin. Definitely tag Berlin Spoken Word, Unicorn Open Mic. There's a number of really brilliant spaces to share that work. And the project that I'm really excited about, besides hosting my own open mic, that if you share my profile, it's in that bio, is this book project that I started with a few very wonderful creatives, which is called Florets, like broccoli, like the vegetables that I eat so frequently. And this, when you speak about the unexpected turns for oneself when you live somewhere new, I not only didn't expect myself to be a writer and perform anything, but I found a distinct interest in attempting to challenge the barrier between a young writer and, in the same way that Berlin Spoken Word in these spaces, make it more accessible to say, I am a writer, or I can perform. Like, what does it mean to be a performer? It means you have gotten up there and tried it. You become a performer. That's second. In the same way, what does being published mean? And I was really interested in publishing a few of my pieces, but also uplifting others that I figured or found their work was really wonderful, and I knew that they hadn't been able to, as I always phrase it, like hold their work in print like this. This is really important. And it was meant to be a one-time project, and now will be happening more often. So we haven't shared anything about what is to come for volume 2, besides that it will exist. But please follow if you are interested in writing, if you are a writer yourself or would like to support. There's just a few of these copies left, a few at Curious Fox and Hopscotch, really wonderful bookshops. All right. And I have a few with me, generally.
All right.
But yeah, this is a project that I think is really special to follow. It's a lot of people giving heart and soul for sharing the words of people living here. And in this case, all with some form of immigrant background. So as we talk about immigrant experience, queer experience, these things, this is a project that really centers that. Thank you.
Well,
thank you for the time.
Congratulations for your project.
Yeah, congratulations. And well, once again, has been a really big pleasure. For all the people who has been listening, thank you very much for your support. Please subscribe and follow us in our social networks.
Yes, please follow us on Instagram in Guten Tag Podcast.
And share with your friends, immigrant, expat, whatever you want to identify yourself, share it there. And see you until next time. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you.